Awesome. I'm super excited about this conversation today. And really, I want to start with the mission that we have here at KW Westfield and Keller Williams overall, which is that by 2025, we are on the hunt to create 100,000 millionaires. And specifically in our Orem office, we want to have 100 people be able to reach that level of prosperity. And one of the things, Johnny, I think that's important to state is that it's not about the money. But if you look at one of the quotes from Jim Rohn, he says that earn $1 million not for the money itself, but for what it forces you to become in the process, or who it forces you to become in the process. And the different level of skill sets, the different mindset breakthroughs, all the value that you have to create for other people in order to get to that level. And so that's really a part of this conversation today. That is our mission. And part of these conversations are going to help with that process. And Hunter, if you actually want to go to the next slide, I want to start with really just outlining what the science of wealth is. And it really, this conversation is understanding that the science of wealth involves understanding economic principles, investment strategies, behavioral psychology, and even financial planning to make informed decisions that lead to long-term prosperity. So it's a combination of all of these different pieces that really help people to grow financially. And that brings us today's opportunity to get to interview Johnny around this topic. And Johnny, you've been a great mentor for me, and I know many others in this room around their wealth building journey. And for those who don't know you, because there's actually a lot of new faces in the crowd today, I want to get your perspective of just what your story is. So just give them a snapshot of your journey over the last 15 years, because you got into real estate really at the perfect time, right, in history. And then what happened?
Yeah, I just renewed my license for the 8th time, which is 16 years in the business. I got in in 2007 at 22 years old, basically served a mission, jumped right into real estate school when I got back. And the rest is history. You know, I jumped in first selling real estate. The recession happened pretty much immediately. I'd heard rumors of a great market before then. My partner Clay and I talk about we grew up in the Great Recession, basically, because we didn't really know anything but that. And I've always tried to find gratitude along the journey. Life goes up and down, but a lot of the habits and who I became, I do owe to a lot of the resilience and the grit and the grind that I had to develop over that first course. But I sold real estate pretty much full time for 3.5 years. The team leader position in this market center opened up right when we were around 65 agents. I was 10 years in the team leader CEO position of KW Westfield, stepped out of that, bought a couple more partners out, became the majority owner of Westfield, and at the same time stepped into the state director role. So I'm the regional director for KW Utah. We're 1,700 agents strong here in Utah, and just been doing a lot of other random businesses and investments since then. So
awesome. So it's been a long journey. And I think one of the realities about money, we have to get clear about how a lot of money beliefs and habits really start for people in their formative years. So it starts in childhood. It starts in, them being a teenager, through experiences, through upbringing. So I'm curious about if you could just speak to, your maybe relationship with money growing up and what that looked like.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think several people in the room today have heard my story, but the word scarcity comes to mind. You know, I grew up primarily with a single mom. It was me, my older brother of 2 years. And my mom had children pretty early on in her life. I think she had the first one at 18, 19, something like that. And so she just never really had the full opportunity to go to college and get an education and really go progress in her career. So growing up with a single mom, she kind of just jumped around a lot of entry-level jobs, and trying to support kids and a household on not a lot of incomes was difficult. So I just, I still think I had a good childhood. I think I was happy, but a bunch of money was not part of it, and my mom probably did a good job of sheltering me from the stress that maybe she was living at the point. But I just knew always growing up that there was more out there. I had a couple friends and their parents, that had money. So I knew it was possible. And then, right out of high school, my dad was kind of in the picture, but didn't really have a fantastic relationship with him. But as soon as I got it, especially having a teenager now, like my world became friends. So junior high, high school was a lot of friends was my world. But after high school, right after I graduated, a few months later, my mom passed away. So I got really thrown into life early and quickly. And I didn't really have anywhere to turn but go blaze my own trail. So that was one of the things that kind of led me to a church mission, went on that, but just really was independent, I don't know, from 14, 15 on basically. So I just didn't have a lot of handouts. So I had to go figure out my own pathway in life. So I think a lot of the attributes or the character I have came out of that time period of just like having to go do it on my own,
Yeah. So it sounds like that time of your life obviously created kind of a unique, foundation for where you're at today. But I'm curious, kind of bridge the gap for us. What were some of those ways that you reshaped maybe some of your money beliefs or some of those experiences you had early on with money today compared to then?
Yeah. I have a lot of just good, extended family, but most of them are all just kind of good, solid W-2 workers, a lot of city workers, a lot of construction workers, truck drivers, that type of thing. So I think I grew up with poor financial programming. And part of that early stages of, late teens, early 20s, I tell people I almost had to reprogram the way that I thought about money. I had the typical mindset of just, I think I was actually the first kid in my family that had a college degree as well. So graduating with my bachelor's, but I kind of had that program and just get a good job and just, survive. And when I joined Keller Williams, it was really one of the first social environments that I got into that made me believe that there's more possible, So I think that was part of it, is just reprogramming the way that I thought about money and starting to crave, just like you mentioned, starting to crave that financial literacy was probably born early on with me.
Yeah, love that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's actually take a step back and actually just define wealth in your perspective, because everybody might have different thoughts when we say that word. So I'm curious what your definition of wealth is.
Yeah. I think I have a lot of the basic answers. Wealth, is doing what you want, whenever you want, as much as you want, with whoever you want. Tony Robbins always says that. Wealth equals abundance, not just in money, but in relationships and in a lot of the areas of life. But the more I've thought about it, I think wealth to me equals options. I think having the ability to spend more of your time choosing, I guess, who, what, where you want to go, I guess. And wealth initially to me was started out as income. How can I make some money? Then it started being, the balance sheet and the net worth concept started clicking in my mind, and actually start building a balance sheet. I wish it maybe developed a little bit earlier, but now it's all about passive income and cash flow to me. So kind of a mixture of all those definitions. So
yeah, I love. I know I've heard you also quote Gary Keller, where he speaks about money and wealth is simply having enough passive income to fund your life mission, right? Whatever that is. And so I think it's important to get clear that wealth isn't always 1 million, 5 million, 10 million. For some people, you have to clarify first what's actually important to you and what your life mission is, or what your purpose is. Because the way Gary talks about it is, he says, if your life mission only requires 50,000 or 100 grand a year, could you by definition become wealthy by achieving that in passive income, right? Because one of the key portions of that is, how do you get to that place with not having to work for it, where it comes in passively? And we'll talk a lot about that investment journey in a moment, but could you unpack maybe some of your wealth philosophies? So just some of the beliefs that you have formed over the years, maybe that you've obtained through association with different mentors, through different programs. I know you've gotten to a lot of different wealth building, focused seminars. So what are some of those wealth philosophies that you now believe?
Yeah, even in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, it talks about you got to separate money from what you do, and I really have bought into that. I think you spending your time doing what you're the best at, money will become a natural byproduct for that. And I think early on, when I felt like I really was working for money, you have to ask yourself, am I working because I love this, or I enjoy, or I'm doing good, or am I working for money? Like I think I would have said I'm working for money early on. And I had to separate that, and money became a bigger, just natural byproduct. I also, I know there are some industries out there, but I never wanted to feel like I was trying to like get money from other people. I'm trying to persuade them or convince them or something to buy something, and that's why I think I gravitated to real estate sales, because it's a relationship based sell. I think money is an exchange of just pouring into people, whether it's your sellers, your buyers, your agents, your leaders, or whatever. I think you just truly trying to add an immense long-term set of value. I think money will naturally come to that. And I also think, John Maxwell talks about that law of the lid. I do believe it's possible to change the way you think, rewire your brain, but even just raise your lid of your potential. And I don't know exactly where it started, but I just have always craved something more in life. I'd walk out of a movie and I just would feel like I'm destined for something bigger or better. And part of that is, when you talk about the science of wealth, Gary Keller always says that, like gravity, like there's a science of gravity, right? Like if I had to drop this microphone, it's going to fall to the ground. Like there is a science of wealth. There's a lot of just key factual things that if you commit to doing, money will come. And so I think your personal growth, your financial literacy, like you dedicating a lot of time to learning about how money works is crucial just to develop, a wealth philosophy. So,
Yeah. So if you can maybe pinpoint, like, where did that pivot happen for you? Was it right when you got into real estate? Were you exposed to different ideas, along the way that caused you to start thinking that way?
I had a lot of crappy jobs growing up. I think everybody's maybe had a few of those. And you work. And then you get your paycheck and you're like, what? Like, how did that happen? There's so little that actually ended up making it to the bottom line. And I realized probably after high school, where one of my first like real solid full-time jobs was a construction laborer job. I was working 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. And at that point, like it's still decent money, but I realized like there's no way I'm going to be able to swap enough time for this type of wage that is going to make me any more money. So I think that was one of the things that clicked, that like I've got to figure out a better pathway that I can spend less time and put more work into the time that I can commit to it. And that's why when real estate kind of crossed my path, like I'm like, that's cool. I think that could be something. And then I think even just submersing myself into Keller Williams, you start meeting a bunch of people, and we got a lot of impressive people, but we also got people that are making good money just doing what they're doing, and it made me realize that instead of thinking, oh, that would be cool, it started making it a belief that like it is possible for me, and then it can start turning into a confidence, like I'm going to go get it, and I think early on I caught the bug just to work my tail off and become great at something to go make some money. Yeah.
So I want to go back for a second. One of the things that you hit on as far as just one of your wealth principles, that is one of my beliefs. And I think it's so important to highlight, especially in our industry or in the real estate space, because money is simply a byproduct to the amount of value that we provide to other people. And so I'm curious, how do you feel like that has played a role in your wealth building journey, finding ways to pour into others and going, to one of the quotes of that, the way to get what you want in your life is to help enough other people attain what they want. So I'm just curious, how do you feel like that has impacted your wealth building journey, pouring into other people?
Yeah. When it came to selling real estate, buyers and sellers, like if you're ever trying to like push or convince someone to buy or sell something they truly don't want to buy or sell, like eventually it's going to come out. They're going to feel that, the sell cycle is so long in the real estate world versus like knocking on a door, you got 10 minutes to try to sell something. Right. And some of the deals that you feel like go together the easiest, like will unravel, the ones that take time. Sometimes those are the ones that are easier to get to the closing table. And I don't, one of the wealth, provisions we have on our real estate team is we consider ourselves wealth advisors, and so really what is the best decision for the buyers or sellers? When I have potential sellers even call me to this day and they want to sell their house, and I respond, well, have you ever thought about renting the house out? Even though that means I would not make a commission check on it, like it immediately diffuses that like I have their best interests at heart, And even agents, they're the brokerage management world is a high quantity, low margin game. Like we operate typically on razor thin margins, which is why we have to be bigger to actually go make money. And especially new agents, it is hard to make money on new agents. And our company is built on just getting a lot of great people in and getting them past that first 3, 4, 6, 12 months. And you can lose a lot of money trying to build a company on new agents even, right? And so part of that is if you pour into people long enough and you pour into the right people, I do think the retention and the long-term relationships that you build eventually can get you to the component that you can make money in the brokerage world. And even owning real estate, right? Having good tenants and doing the right thing over and over, it's hard to make a lot of money really quickly in investing real estate. I think big money comes over time. And I think just, I guess I just always have a couple key attributes of just like, I hate wasting stuff. So I'm always trying to just make sure we're using everything really, really efficiently. And then something else that I've just always, maybe it's childhood, but I always want to leave everything better than when I found it, whether that's like a rental, whether that's a hotel room, or whether that's like an office or an appointment or whatever. I think if you have even that mentality of just trying to leave everything better than when you found it, like that's a good key to success for sure.
And really what you're speaking to is, core habits, right? That impact outcomes. And one of those of, leaving every experience or every person better than you found it is, I assume, one of those key habits that has added a lot of value to your wealth building journey. I'm curious about any other, habits that you can highlight and say that has directly impacted my financial success.
Yeah. I think the education, I am a habitual subscriber to anything that's out there that can teach me more about financial literacy, money, investing, or whatever, even college, there's probably a lot of other degrees. Nobody makes fun of me for this. There's a lot of other degrees that would be a better fit for my natural entrepreneurial behavior, but I chose accounting, which was a grind for me, credits and debits. Like it was hard for me to get through that, but I just knew it would give me a better tool or skill set later on. When I'm in the car, when I'm working out every morning, like I don't listen to music typically. I'm subscribing to podcasts, or books or whatever, like any class that's out there that talks about wealth building or money or something, like I've subscribed to. So I think that habit one, you have to dedicate several hours a week to learning about money. There's so many good books out there that would just, if you can read them early on and develop those habits, it could change your world. So I think that's one. Number two is just live below your means. I know we hear that all the time, but when it comes to you buying the fancy thing or not, like it is against your natural behavior to say no to yourself a lot of times, and even the way that we grew up, whether it was a recession or whatever, I'm glad that I was willing to keep that habit, because there's living on a low set of expense. That's one thing, right? But then there's also at the same time trying to emotionally and mentally raise your financial thermostat on what your earning potential is. Because most of the time when people start raising their earning potential or their financial thermostat, as we say, there goes their expenses as well, right? But like the bigger you can keep that gap longer, the faster you get that snowball rolling, which then just creates financial freedom, and part of just the habits that we had built in the recession of living on, ramen noodles and counting our pennies and, watching every dollar that we spend, and then as the market started expanding, our income started going up, but we tried to keep our expenses down there, but keep raising our mindset. And then every dollar that we could, we'd move over. And Gary Keller always says the 70-30 habit, well, every dollar you make, 70% spend, taxes, giving, whatever else, 30% goes to your investment world, right? So that's been a minimum standard in my world of just every dollar I make, 30% has to move to investing. And investing is not putting in a savings account until the next thing you want to buy. Like it has moved to my investing world, which I dedicated at least a 20-year time period that I would never touch a penny that I moved over. And part of that is, I'm grateful that I got in and learned some of these things young so I could stay kind of, delaying the gratification, when I was in that recession, like I saw so many great people, mentors, whatever, that got their expenses out of whack, and all of a sudden the market kind of tanked and they just lost everything, and I tried to learn from people on that. I was telling Jojo earlier that, before I was 30, I asked the question, if you could go back to your early 20s, what's the best 1, 2, 3 pieces of financial advice that you could ever give? I asked that thousands of times, I would bet, before I turned 30, just really trying to learn from people's, wins, but also learning from their mistakes. So I would say, subscribe to financial literacy, live below your means. I was a multimillionaire living in a townhome at 35 years old that I bought for $250,000. Like that's how extreme I was trying to dedicate myself to living that way, and you still got to enjoy life, but enjoying life when you've earned it versus enjoying your life when you haven't earned it is a big difference, and then just making sure that you're moving some sort of, people say it different ways, but, pay yourself first, profit yourself first or whatever, but just have some sort of money management strategy and just get real with yourself. Like, what does it take? Do I have to literally give my money to someone else so they actually will save the 30% or whatever? Set up whatever you have to make sure that every dollar you make isn't a dollar. It's, 50 cents, 70 cents or whatever. And there was probably years that it was 70 cents to the investing world, like it's just how fast do you want to get that ball rolling, or how fast do you want to retire? And there's a lot of people that we coach too that have just procrastinated. We've got a lot of procrastination inside ourselves. And if you even got a short window or a timeline before you're ready to retire, or you want that wealth or financial freedom, like you probably have to have an even a more extreme commitment to some of these habits to catch up for some of the bad behavior. Right. So.
Yeah, there's a saying that how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And I think it's so important to cultivate some of those positive habits early on in your wealth building journey. And if you're not saving $1,000 for every 10,000 that you make, you're most likely not going to save $100,000 for every $1 million that you make. And so you have to start putting money away, whatever that is, and start creating a percentage of that income that you're going to put towards your long-term investment journey, right? Another thing you pointed out was delayed gratification. Which is such an important piece. But I think the most impactful for me is really just understanding your financial thermostat, right? Understanding where you're currently programmed, and then how can you increase that? So I'm curious about what role self-development has played, or continuous learning, in your journey towards wealth building.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that. I think you probably have some emotional ones, some mental ones, and then some very tactical ones, and I'm a big advocate of logic makes you think, emotions make you act, right? So even if you know everything what to do, you still need the buy-in emotionally. So I think it's kind of a two-headed battle every once in a while, but regardless, you've got to learn the tactics, and by tactics, when you get in the real estate world, specifically into this industry, you realize quickly that you're not just selling real estate. You got to be a marketer. You got to be an entity planner. You got to be a tax expert. You got to be all these things now, because when you run your own business, which a lot of the United States is a lot of just small businesses, it's not about just your trade. Like you got to be, you got to learn a lot about that, So I've spent almost 2 decades learning about what are the tax laws that are written to guide our investment decisions that allow us to pay less in tax. I've learned on, what entities and legal, structures and shells can protect your money and help you make more money and whatnot, So I think a lot of the tactical things are there, and even just a scoreboard. If you don't know where you are, how are you ever going to know where you're going? Right. So I physically can't remember the last time that I didn't have a monthly transmittal, right? Of just knowing what my household P&L, like what money came in and what money went out. Like, and I know every single month for at least the last 15 years of my life, every single month, did I win or lose that month, right? And I've lost some months, but like you just got to win more than you lose. So that's how you win, right? And then balance sheet, right? Like it's a two-headed process. Like you've got to make sure, like, here's my assets. This is the stuff I have right now. These are the people I owe money to. What's left over on my net worth, right? And you got to do both those. And I think some people are decent on maybe on the P&L side. They kind of know what money's coming in and out, but they don't know this other side. Or even some people are good at this and then they lose sight of this. So I think you've got to make sure that you're doing both of those, right? And I think more than anything, going to the emotional side, just doing the work that, when I was a team leader, like I had thousands of recruiting appointments of these people sitting across from me that were interested in drastically changing their life, that they were going to go from a whatever job they had to getting into a business that doesn't pay you anything. And then all of a sudden it's a commission check, type of scenario, and it takes a lot of courage to just jump ship like that and try to go down that road. And more than anything, I loved those appointments because I just believed in these people across from me, and so part of that is primarily just because what this company and what the real estate world's done for me, that if it can do it for me, it can do it for others. But I just, over a process, I had to just up what I believe I was worth and what my life was worth, and I think at the beginning, it starts just like, oh, I want to just pay for some of this stuff, like some of my very early goals was I wanted to be able to go to like a restaurant and order an appetizer. We didn't have appetizers when I was young, or even the Zig Ziglar, story about him going to the grocery store and not being able to afford the groceries. Like I want to be able to go to the grocery store and buy whatever I wanted to buy, I was so sick of growing up on crappy, branded cereals and, all the off-brand stuff growing up as a kid. I'm like, I want to buy the good stuff, and so that became my goal. And then, it started moving on, especially when you have kids, it starts moving on and be like, oh, I'm a parent now. Like I want to provide for them and I want to give them a better life than not. So you've got to just, and some of that's affirmations, gratitude, that just ups your emotional value inside yourself. And then the other thing too is just your social, circle, your network, and you've been a good example of that too. But I honestly don't think I had met a millionaire until I was maybe 22, 23 years old. And part of that is just like the world I grew up in, like you surround yourself with people like you or who like you, and so part of that is I had to go out and start developing the habits to put myself in other circles to, I'm a believer of your income as the average income of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. Right. And if you don't have those people in your life, you got to be purposeful to go get those people in your life. And a lot of those people are a lot more gracious and open to letting people come in their life than not, so.
Yeah. This question, you can circle back to if something doesn't immediately come to mind. Because one thing you point out that's interesting, how many of you are parents in this room? How many of you would like to have kids in the future? Okay. I'm in that category. And so I consistently think of what are some of the mental models, financial models I want to pass on to my kids that I maybe didn't have growing up. And I was actually listening to a podcast by Patrick Bet-David and has an amazing podcast called Valuetainment. And one of the things that he went back and studied the Rothschilds and a lot of financially successful families in the past. And one of the things that the Vanderbilts and one of the things that he looked at was that it wasn't generational wealth that was important. So most people think about passing on their wealth to generations. What he talked about was the deciding factor on if wealth would stay in that family long term was the generational habits that were passed on, the generational beliefs. And so I'm curious if there's any kind of, things that you've set up with your kids to help start teaching them about money, help them start thinking about wealth building, investing. That's been a part of your process. And then the second question, if you don't have any things that come immediately to mind, is just what financial models or frameworks do you consistently rely on when making investment decisions?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the habits I tried, and I'm still trying now, my oldest is 13, 12, so they're still a little young, but you can never start too early on some of the habits. And the first one is just that split of you don't count every dollar as a dollar, so like no matter what they do in life, whether I pay them commission to do some of the house or they earn money somewhere else, like it is a 50-50 split. Like 50% is what they can actually spend, 50% goes in their savings, and we're going to start actually showing them how to invest.
So you start taxing them.
Yeah, that's
right
called the
up
dad tax right now, which they get angry about. But I'm like, if they can learn that habit out the gates, that would be invaluable to them, right? And another one's just work, which is a tough one. Teaching your kid, because it's like every great person I know, they're great because of the adversity that they dealt with, in their childhood or growing up, and then you go through that and then you have kids and you don't want to put them through that. So you try to give them the best life and then they're spoiled kids and you screw them up. Right. So it's just such a weird balance. I went golfing yesterday and it was raining. So they wouldn't let us, I took my two boys with JoJo and it was raining. So they wouldn't let us take golf carts out. And my kids are like, so what are we going to do? Like, how do we actually go golf? And it snapped that I'm like, they've never not golfed in a golf cart. Like I hadn't ridden in a golf cart till I was like 18, 19, I think, growing up. And so I'm like, I got some work to do on the work thing still, but I think the paying the split and then, getting them business hungry, like I've given them so many business ideas. I'm waiting for one to click that they'll go do, but them getting a crappy job at the beginning, yeah, that's probably helpful, but them also like clicking that they can go build something early on in their life, I think is something there too. You said the second question is just like what's some of my investment protocol, I guess, when I'm looking at investments.
Just kind of your deal hierarchy, or what do you look for specifically before making an investment decision?
Yeah. Number one, because I've invested in a lot of stuff and almost every time it was out of my own industry, it bit me in the butt one way or another. And so I have learned to stick to real estate. Like if you look at my balance sheet right now, which is there's a bunch of lines on it, like I have almost $0 in anything but real estate assets or real estate businesses tied to the real estate industry. So like I'm an advocate of stick to what you know. And as soon as you have to go give your money to someone else, they usually don't care about it as much as you do. So I think I've kind of kept it to my specialty pretty well. I think one of the, I believe in the left side, right side. What am I swapping my time on the business side, earned income, like business income side, and then I move that money over to my what I call my right side, which is just accumulating a down payment, buying another asset, accumulating down payment, buying another asset. So on my right side, real estate assets, you put as little money in the deal as possible to minimum break even on a monthly cash flow. There's deals that we put, $1,000 into. There's deals that we've put 30-40% down payments into. But like I've tried my hardest to every asset I own. It's got to be positioned well. We got good tenants. It's in a decent location, whatever, but at least break even because I know on my asset side, because I've dedicated the time to not touching that money, that time in the real estate world owning stuff makes everybody look like geniuses, and that's why I've tried to always live off of me swapping my time for money over here on the left side and then just letting my retirement ride on the asset side. And every year, if you keep putting 30% of your income over and do that for 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, like you're going to look smart, right? On the left side, for a long time, I was like the devil's advocate. People used to come to me all the time wanting to start all these crazy businesses. And I believe in what Gary says is just stick your time doing what you're the best at. A lot of times when boredom reaches people, then they'll go career change or they'll swap their time for another business or something. And you just are restarting the clock before like the momentum in a business comes, right? Most small businesses take 7 years to start making a profit, right? So like if every 3 years you get bored and want to go start the next business and the next business that have nothing to do with real estate, like you just keep starting your clock over. So like I know that we all go through, ADD where we just want to do a bunch of different stuff, but like I've just stuck to what I do best. And my job is real estate, selling or leading people that sell real estate. And then the businesses that we own are all very correlated around those things, So if someone comes to me and say, hey, I want to start a landscaping company, I'm going to be really leveraged and I'm just going to own it. I'm like, I give you 30 days and you're going to be a full-time landscaper, like you just have to protect your time. And I've always tried to use, buying another asset or something to do the heavy lifting for me being bored or something, so just sticking to what you know.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight your time horizon is not 1 year, it sounds like, when you're making investment decisions. And I think this is such a key because a lot of our, just current society or our generation has stepped into this place where it's like the instant button, right? We want everything now. And so a lot of it when it comes to investing is there's shiny objects that are out there, right? There's other asset classes where people kind of preach that you can earn, X amount overnight. And with real estate, it is the long and tried and true tested way of building wealth. So I'm curious, bringing it back to Utah specifically, because one of the things that people look at is when they first analyze a deal and they're like, oh, this is bringing $10 in cash flow or it's break even, not a good investment, right? Is their initial thought. But Utah, one of the things that people have to really identify up front is what their strategy is, what their goal is, right? Cash flow is one type of goal, but your equity buildup and your long-term wealth is another piece. And in identifying properties that are in, scarce, desirable locations is such a big key. So I'm curious about, are you currently investing in Utah? And if so, what are some of the maybe opportunities that you foresee on our current landscape in Utah that make it a great 10 to 15 year run?
Yeah, I got a little bit of stuff in South America. I'm getting a little bit more interested on some of the cash flow, passive income, out of state rentals, but I'm still primarily in Utah. And I think the culture, the society, the economic principles, the conservative nature of how we do business and budget balancing and stuff, like I believed in Utah the last 15 years. And I know things have gotten a little expensive. But again, projections are we're going to add another 1 million people in the next 30, 40 years in the state of Utah. So we got to put them somewhere, right? Somebody's got to own some rentals. Somebody's got to land develop. Somebody's got to sell them that stuff. So I still fundamentally believe that at least 85, 90% of my investing will continue to be in Utah in the next 10 to 15 years. Other states, we see the news, how it doesn't seem like the right places that I'd want to put my money. I know there's still a lot lower priced markets that haven't had the appreciation that maybe passive income could be a little bit better, but I'm gonna, my money's on Utah, no doubt. I think we could get a little cooler, no doubt. I think we could have some better restaurants and stuff, but somebody's got to bring all that stuff in, and I think we've got a good group that's going to go do it. So.
Awesome. Love that. Can you reflect on maybe a little different topic here, but can you reflect on the importance of giving back, philanthropy, charitable contributions, and how that has actually been a part of your wealth building goals?
Yeah. Life has its ups and downs, and even just being in a career for 16 years in Keller Williams and kind of have the reach that we have, like there's just constant tragedies that happen to good people. Even my role as a state director, a lot of the national, weather disasters, it's almost predictable at this point, fires and tornadoes and floods. So that, I realized quickly that there's way more needs than I'll ever be able to make enough money to solve. I still have goals of helping, giving 10% of my income, to a lot of that stuff. I typically am a little bit more private on a lot of the things that I like to do or where I give money. There's some general passionate projects like, even feeding, hungry kids. We've been focused on, growing up with a single mom. Like I have a sweet spot of wanting to help single moms, but part of what I learned, even being in the team leader role, was there's other ways to give. It's, you can give your gratitude, you can give your money, you can give your time, which is actually sometimes more needed than the money is. But even going down the path of leadership, like given my leadership, and I realized that I could give some money, but I can lead other people to give a lot more money than I'll be able to give. So you got to just choose your paths in a lot of those to give, but I realized early on too, that like, once you get that snowball moving, like I'm not going to be the guy that just leaves a bunch to my kids, so even giving your wealth later in life is going to be a big component of my world. So,
yeah, love that. Yeah. One of my beliefs, because a lot of people, who's heard the song says, more money, more problems. Right. And that is a consistent belief that, some people have. And I think that for me, what I've come to realize is that more money provides more opportunity for giving, right? And so I had a great mentor early on who said that money does not change a person. It simply amplifies who they are. And so if you're a great person and you fall into or you build wealth, likely you're going to use that money for good and for impact. And that's one of the things I'm so grateful for, especially with Keller Williams, is KW Cares and the commitment that we have to helping other people that are going through challenging times. So I do want that to be kind of forefront as well, is think about when you're really committed to building wealth, it's not just about you. And when you can actually get outside of yourself and start thinking about how it can positively impact your family members, your neighborhood, your community, people beyond yourself, it gives you so much more drive and momentum to go beyond the status quo. Johnny, one of the things I've admired about you is just your clarity around where you're heading and the impact that you want to have. I've seen, some of the behind the scenes, your leadership style. And one of the things I've really been grateful for is seeing how much you do care about other people, especially those who are part of the KW organization. And so I'm just curious, where did that clarity come for you? Was there an aha moment where you're like, I can help a lot of people, accomplish their goals and get better? Where did that all stem from?
Yeah, I think, when I showed up to Keller Williams, I think I'm somewhat smart. I think I'm somewhat talented, but I really think most of me is just a product of just consistently showing up and other people pouring into me early on in my career, So I have a tremendous amount of gratitude of just every little bit that I got from others. And I think that just turned into a multiplication, factor for me that I want to do that for other people, whether it's answering a new agent question or teaching a class or coaching someone, or, I've spent a lot of time just trying to even replicate what's inside of me to other people. And it took a lot to kind of break through my family tree, and just break some of the negative programming that I had, that I believe it's possible for everybody. I was still born in America. I understand that there's still a lot of things that I was blessed with. But I think, even Gary says you're 5 years away from having or being whoever you want and having anything you want. A lot of times we overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but we drastically underestimate what we can do in 3 or 5 years. And I hope that I can just constantly, till the day I die, just be a catalyst of change for other people,
Love that. So I'll ask you one final question. And then if anybody has a question they'd like to ask, we probably have time for 1 or 2 questions. And this just comes down to, action is the most important key with anything, right? Any principle that we learn in life. And so if you can just maybe pinpoint what 1 or 2 suggestions you would make to people in this room of what can they do today or this week to start making progress on their financial journey, and really move closer towards financial freedom.
Yeah, one is just dedicate to being awesome at whatever it is that you want to do. If you're going to be selling real estate, dedicate yourself to selling real estate at the highest level possible. Even in the middle of a recession, there's times that we would show up to work and we didn't know what to do because there wasn't very much to do, but every day we still committed to just showing up to work, And I think everybody wants freedom and flexibility and variety and diversity in their work and all that stuff, but you got to go earn it, and just go crush something for 10 years, 20 years, So dedicate yourself and just commit to being, a master at something. The second thing is just get real with where you're at financially. If you want to build wealth, get real exactly where you are. A lot of times you judge others off their actions. You judge yourself off your intentions, just be a realist. Where are you? Where do you want to go? The paths and the math, work out the plan, So if you haven't for a long time, go do your, your last month's expense management, P&L, whatever, do your balance sheet right now. Even just knowing where you are right now is the first thing. And then it's just creating some goals on managing your money better, and then get some money to that investment side, and then just start getting in your investments. I've known people for 10, 20 years that have been telling me, oh, I got to get my first rental. I got to get my first rental, and then you blink and 10 years goes by, 15 years go by. And some of these people have made, $1 million of income over the last 15 years, and I'm like, why didn't you buy a rental? I don't know. You got to just get real with that and just commit to some very basic things. And then just organize your life that way,
Love it. The big takeaway for me is realizing that it's not easy, but it is simple. We just have to spend more time and attention on this side of our life, right? There's 7 different areas of life that we can invest into, and too often this one is highly neglected, right? We might focus on our career, but the wealth building portion of it is a separate piece. And I know from our conversations that you've been very intentional around just that monthly routine of visiting your wealth and making sure that you have a relationship with your money, right? So any questions before we wrap up from the crowd? Okay, we got Graydon.
I can just repeat it.
Just repeat it. Yeah, how do you think food, fitness, diet relates to business?
Yeah. How does food, fitness, health relate to wealth building or wealth building path? Yeah. Again, if you've ever been sick or hurt, injured in the hospital, you don't care about anything else, right? And I absolutely believe you've got to make health a priority, and I've gone through my own ups and downs, but it takes energy. Energy is a gas tank. You have it as you use it. You're going to have less of it throughout the day. Same with willpower. So that's one of the habits for years and years and years, I didn't consider myself a morning person. I was always late to high school, just probably until my mid-20s. I realized you can reprogram your brain. And that was one thing that I started telling myself. It took me a long time to tell myself, I'm a morning person. I'm a morning person. I'm a morning person. Because I was anything but a morning person. And finally, over time, telling myself that every single day, I became a morning person. And for me, I have to do some sort of exercise or workout every morning, or I'm now programmed to feel like I'm going to have a crappy day, So part of that is it is absolutely goes hand in hand with wealth building or anything else great in life, and part of it is you can be broke, you can be rich. Both of those are hard, you can be fat, you can be fit. Both of those are hard. I'm a believer, you just got to choose your hard, and I've been broke, I've been fat Johnny, I've been fit Johnny. Just choose what you want and just go apply the principles to get what you want. So cool. Anybody else?
Exact switch. I think a lot of people I talk to that I guess it's hard to comprehend, working and getting enough money to start investing into something. So can you talk about that transition for you?
Yeah. There's probably a little bit a little bit of threshold. There was a couple of years, the first year in real estate, I think I made $17,000, right? And I think there's still some basic needs, you have, somewhere to live, you got food, you got some clothes, to live, but a lot of, getting to those basics, that can keep you out of law of scarcity. If you're below that, I get it. I understand where poverty's at. I've been there before. And when I don't know, where I'm going to come up with $2 to go get some Wendy's chicken nuggets, I get that can occupy your brain, but you got to get to some sort of base level of income, which is not that significant. I know, but you just have to understand that being fashionable, the car you drive, the fanciness of the food you eat or whatever, those are no longer things that you should be preoccupied with working for money over, get some of those basics out and then really transitioning. To me, it was realistically somewhere around 20,000-30,000 bucks of income in a year. Above that, I think I started transitioning into I'm no longer working for money. Once you get those basic needs met for, But it also is just, it has to be deliberate too. You know, it's easy to have money as the motivator. And sometimes it takes a little bit of money to realize money didn't solve your emotional issues, your relationship issues, or any of that other stuff. So I think it's a journey. You know, I think you're constantly have to re-go through that a little bit. But a lot of times, what's that quote? We spend all day working for people to buy things we don't care about, to impress people that we don't care about, or something. You know, and part of that is you just, what's the most important to you? And for me, early on, it was having security. You know, not having that growing up, and especially having kids now, not having that for them. Like, I can't imagine looking at my kids while they're sleeping, not knowing where their next meal is. Like, that is hard, you know? And I think I just always wanted to just go crush it and just build wealth, you know?
I'll add some context to that, Spencer. Great question as well. I think one of my early mentors, when I was 21 years old, he said, I asked him essentially what his best investments were. And he gave me 3. And he said, these are the 3 best investments that you can make. And it's in this order. And he said, the first one was yourself. He said, you will always pay the highest dividends. He then said, network equity, or investing in relationships, other people, is the second piece. And then the third one, funny enough, was real estate. And I think that number 1 is such an important piece, because oftentimes we have to focus first on our skill set development, investing back into ourselves through seminars, courses, putting ourselves in the room, in the right rooms, and really focus or lean into the skill sets that we're developing, because skill sets can produce the highest amount of active income, right? Which your active income is what you then use to invest for passive income. But it's asking, how can I grow what I annually make in whatever industry? And luckily in real estate, if you're in this space, you have complete control over what you make in a year, right? And so it says, well, how can I, if I'm producing at 100 grand right now, what would need to happen for me to start producing at $200,000 a year or $300,000 a year? And knowing that that is going to be the best investment of time up front is investing into yourself and just developing those skill sets.
Well, one of the biggest challenges in real estate is complacency too. You know, over the last 10 years, it's been a good market. And a lot of times I can tell real quickly if an agent is working for money or not, is they'll have a great month and then immediately I don't see them for another month, you know? And part of that is they were not showing up because they really wanted to go do the things that they're great at. They were showing up to get that money and then they immediately stopped working, you know? And so I think it's a little bit of a process of separating those, and just even having really clear financial goals that are 100% separated from career goals was a big one for me, is setting business, career, skill set goals, and then also setting a separate area of life of wealth goals. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else?
Awesome. Thank you all. Please be ready for the boot camp. We have, again, 20 to 25 people registered, and it's going to be great. That will kick off next Monday at 8:30 a.m. So we'll be down here, large training room, 8:30. We're going to have some great things prepared for you. So be ready for it. Okay. Have a great week.
Thank you.